Thank you, Cecilia. Cecilia Wakesho there in the county of Taita Taveta, just telling us what's happening there, speaking with the returning officer for that constituency, telling us some of the results, especially the one that everybody's keeping an eye on. That is a gubernatorial race in the county of Taita Taveta. From what she has said is, according to the IEBC provisional results, that is from 95% of the total votes cast in yesterday's polls. Let me reintroduce my panel again. I have with me political commentators Dismas Mokua, Javas Bigambo, and Mano Magoma. Before we get into this, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Before we get into these battles and what's been happening according to the provisional results, the big story, of course, is NASA and the presidential candidate Raila Odinga coming out early morning today to reject the results so far that were tallied by that on that IEBC portal, and it did say that they have evidence. NASA have evidence that the servers of IEBC have been, tampered with or hacked. IEBC have come out to refuse that, but that has brought a lot of attention on the IEBC itself, even as they continue to say they are receiving those forms 34A and B. They say they have received 28,000 from across the from polling stations. People asking, or NASA asking, what is happening to the rest? What is your take on this whole hullabaloo about, the tallying of results? Up to now, we don't have any physical or final results. We're just dealing with what's happening on that electronic portal.
Well, Ben, this general election is supposed to serve and secure the interest of Wanjiko, the normal voter. But as it is today, or right now as we speak, it's revolving around two politicians, around President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. And those two stakeholders are so important in Kenya today that Kenyans are going concerned is actually dependent on their thinking because of the political capital they hold. And one can easily assume that about 50% of this nation would take Mr. Raila Odinga's word to the bank. And his word is almost low. And that the balance again respects President Kenyatta in the same vein. Mm-hmm. And one would expect that IEBC would take seriously any concerns raised by Raila Odinga, whether they are genuine, whether they are frivolous, but those issues must be addressed. In the morning when he said that he's got evidence that the IEBC system has been hacked into and some algorithms have been introduced to manipulate the numbers, instead of people dismissing him, they should actually look at all the issues as raised. If there are 20 issues, they should be able to dismiss one by one. Maybe there's need to do a quick forensic audit so that we can say that the issues you are raising do not actually make sense. Right. Because there's 50% of the nation right now, as you have this conversation, believe that Mr. Raila Odinga has got a solid case. And the way they are arguing their case, they are saying on the contentious positions, when somebody has got 54%, there's always there's a gap of about 10, 11 points. And in as much as you may want to say that Mr. Raila Odinga has been losing every election he's participated in, or he never accepts defeat, it's only fair for IEBC to dismiss those allegations scientifically so that people can have a peace of mind. So that at the end of the day, when IEBC declares, say, President Kenyatta as a winner or Raila Odinga as a winner, then people take that word to the bank without any contradictions.
Javas, what is your take on these allegations by NASA? And do you think the IEBC has dealt with them in the most effective way?
Well, I'll start by saying that honesty is the first important chapter in the book of wisdom. And our politicians have never turned that first chapter. While it is okay, it's all right for the issues that have been raised by, especially NASA, through its presidential candidate, Raila Odinga, issues actually that speak to how we want to make sure that our election is seen to be fair, to have been free, and to be confirmed as, full of integrity. It is important that aspersions are not cast on IEBC and its people or its staffers, but actually questions just being asked to IEBC so that it clarifies. However, we have also seen limitations, critical limitations, on the part of IEBC in terms of being sluggish of movement, to clarify these issues, to come clear on some of them, because the lack of that clarity is that which now is making anxiety to rise, etc. We know very well that a house divided cannot stand. And so far as we speak, Kenya is a house divided.
Right.
And it's IEBC that should come and stand in that gap to make sure that our country is no longer divided. But much more than that, it would be important, regardless of the kind of claims that are being raised, that politicians exercise restraint in their utterances so that we do not get to see a situation where their statements can be construed to be calling on their supporters possibly to start taking a particular direction or action with regard to demonstrating solidarity with the complaints being raised.
Right. Manuel, from what you've seen, I mean, we followed these conversations the whole day. What NASA are asking, it is 95% almost of the votes, presidential votes tallied. We have seen, or Kenyans have seen, provisional results so far. So Kenyans are asking, or NASA are asking, where are those Forms 34A? Do you think they have, reason to make those claims that we're making today?
I think I want to make several sweeping comments first. That we are sitting discussing whether IEBC has done a good job is a disappointment. Because I think everybody agrees that IEBC has done a splendid job.
Sure.
Everybody. And I'm yet to get a single person who says that IEBC has done a bad job. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just a disappointment in us as a people, as a country, as people who cannot trust each other, who do not trust each other, who elect to believe the bad thing that somebody says rather than the good that or seeks the truth. And I'll give you what I mean. That we are discussing that somebody went at a press conference to make allegations that cannot be ascertained, cannot be proven, and we all take them to be something that is worth looking into, it in itself brings into questions who we are as a people. Because it's right, and it's the democratic right of anybody to question a process. But substantiate it. Substantiate it. That for me is a critical thing.
The NASA brigade
but
say they have evidence, so they say they can prove it.
What evidence? And I remember one of the journalists asking, can you tell us where you got the evidence from? And I remember the Right Honorable Raila Odinga said that we got it from the server. So did you hack the server? If you watch that press conference. And by the way, and this I'll ask, just before I came here, I met with a friend of mine. And we were discussing the same matter, and she says, no, I believe it because Raila has said. Not because she's taken a moment and said, okay, let me look at this factor and question it. IEBC has said that the passwords, and they've said that nobody is disputing it, and nobody has taken them to task, that the passwords that were used to run the electoral system were only availed on the eve of the elections. But yet, the NASA claim is that the system was hacked using the late Chris Sando's access codes. I mean, it's just some things that are just outrageous. But let me put that aside. And let me speak to Raila Odinga. He is a very respectable Kenyan. And I think this country owes him a lot. As somebody who's championed democracy, who's made sure there's a lot more democratic space, who's made sure that even the media houses, and he says that a lot, can be able to discuss things freely, and we must give him credit for that. But for the future generations to remember him, he must also be able to reach a point that he accepts and says, this is the will of the Kenyans. And I want to ask, and the two gentlemen here can bear me witness, show me a single election that Raila has contested and lost, and he has not said he's lost because there was any unfairness. None.
All right.
Since, and let me just include other elections, including the original Ford Kenya contest between himself and Michael Wamalwa, and Michael Wamalwa back then, or General Wamalwa back then.
So are you saying he has lost this election?
Every election that he loses,
final results from
he says it's somebody else. It's somebody else's problem. But
Dismas, what do you think about this?
Well, you know, the arguments by Manuel are very interesting if you're not discussing a matter of national security and national concern. Mr. Raila Odinga is not your normal candidate in the streets that you can wish away, go to bed, and hope everything is going to be okay. So there are several issues that you must look at. When this morning he did a media conference and he presented evidence, there are three things you need to look at. Number one is raised some serious allegations that IEBC needs to respond to. The source notwithstanding, even if somebody hacked into the IEBC system and got that information, you cannot dismiss his allegations merely because you do not know the source of that information. And assuming for a fact that a clever chap within NASA was able to hack into the system, then that raises fundamental questions, that in fact the IEBC system is not bulletproof. And I know many people, lawyers would say that you cannot approach the court with dirty hands, but it is a very serious issue. So maybe the first thing we need to address is the issues that Mr. Raila Odinga has raised. Are they serious? Are they worth of investigation? The issues he has raised, have they compromised the outcome of this election? Then when you are done with that, then maybe you can come to the second level and ask, how did you get this information? So the fact that we do not know the source of the information does not give us the rights to dismiss him and say that every election he has ever lost. Give me a moment, I finish. Give me a moment. And also the fact that maybe in the past elections is never considered defeat does not mean that if this election is free, fair, credible, to every common man that is not going to concede defeat. So we must not start using selective pieces of history to dismiss serious allegations. What one would have expected... Wait a minute. What one would have expected... No, let me clear first. Let me finish first here. What one would have expected is to have an independent observation of all the issues raised. Because, I mean, if the IEBC system has been hacked, for instance, you'd not expect Chebukati or Chiloba to summon a news conference and say, excuse me, our system has been hacked into. He wouldn't say that. So it's important for us to be very careful. All and right. I know we have emotions, but you know the truth will always set you free. And it's important for us not to look at the truth in the eye and address it.
But Dismas, as you say that the truth should set you free, you are in chains. Look, you are talking about, for example, the issue of evidence. Evidence in this matter has not been adduced yet. It is a claim or an allegation that has been raised. No evidence has been adduced to the effect that there is this that can be ascertained with regard to the hacking of the website. It is a critical concern that has been raised by Raila Odinga and by the NASA coalition. Now, the other thing is this. Of course, this is an important election, just like every other election. We realize that the stakes in this election have been extremely high for one critical reason that you and I appreciate, that ultimately there was the settling of the clash of dynasties here, finally in this election, of the Odingaism and Kenyattaism being settled ultimately, because you're not going to see an Odinga and a Kenyatta face off in the foreseeable future. And that's why it matters. And then again, if you look at it, the manner of investment and confidence that was herein expressed by all the parties. But much more than that, you cannot also fail to raise fundamental questions about how this information was obtained. So as we look at the claims being raised, the concerns being raised by NASA, it is also important for us to look at the sourcing of this information, which is also very important, because integrity questions cannot be raised about a system when the same integrity questions cannot be asked about the source of that information. It must be end-to-end questioning and seeking of these answers. However, that does not mean that IEBC should not be concerned about those issues raised. Of course, they have indicated that they have established that there was no hacking, all right? Now, moving forward, it is important for us to be sure that the ultimate question is the availability of the forms that Raila Odinga has claimed that have been lacking, the forms 34A. The moment that has been brought to the surface, and that information, of course, summed up, then in the end, you'll find that the whole claim may not hold water.
All right. The question that many Kenyans want answered is, now what next, as they continue to get those results from the IEBC provisional? So before we get into that, let's cross live to Joy Doreen Bida, who has been keeping an eye on conversations online. That is the biggest thing Kenyans have been talking about today. Joy.